Well, thank you guys for joining us. Welcome to Residing in North Idaho. It's a community podcast and lifestyle podcast for North Idaho. Sometimes there's a real estate twist. Not today, though. Today, we've got some good stuff. My friend Phil Kassel here. He's the director of Liberty Launch Academy. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Close enough.
Executive director.
Whatever. That sounds better. Eric Borden's with me here today, and he's mildly sick, but I can't even tell.
I'm good, bud.
NyQuil.
Told you, one jump on the lake, man. I'm fine.
Fixes everything.
I'm wired now. I'm good.
Well, thank you guys. We had Phil here today. I wanted to obviously interact with him at Liberty Launch Academy, and I like the way you do things. I like the way your family acts. I mean, I'm around at least your older boys quite a bit, and they're dang good young men and extremely motivated, and it makes me think, well, you must be doing something right. So share. Yeah. Yeah. Hoping to get into that and like I saw yesterday you guys went on a 6-mile run, and I was like, I think there's got to be a lesson here for parents on how to motivate. You know, if I tried that with my kids, I'd get a lot of pushback, I think. So
yeah,
kind of wanted to get into that a little bit and see what your strategies are and talk about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful to be on and super passionate like you all on this topic. And I think just in general, so I love where this will possibly go.
Yeah.
Where I hope it'll go. Just around youth, around adults, really, in my view, where I see the root cause of that. And we'll go from there. So, I am married for 17 years.
Nice.
And that's you have to fight for it. Right.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And so you learn that. Got 4 awesome kids, a 14-year-old son, a 12-year-old son, a 8-year-old little girl, and he'll be 7-year-old son on the 29th. And so with my little girl, I would say I've got it easy. They got 3 boys. They got 3 brothers to get through before they even get to dad. So
and there are no slouches on the mats. So that'd be a tough one.
Yeah. So I gotta. Yeah, and my they're all 3 of them are beasts in their own right. But my 14-year-old, you've got to spend some time with. I know the Mount Rainier trip, and So you ask like, how do I do it? It's like probably the same thing as you men. The first thing I do is pray, and stay grounded there. And it was a recent. I don't know if it was your last podcast, but the one you shared with me. With the gentleman that owns that tree business.
Oh yeah, Nick Kraft. Yeah, that was good. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was good, and a lot of things. I was just. Yeah. Amen. And we'll talk about grit, but I mean, one of those aspects of that was the same thing we've taken from the military, you military guys, and me as a wrestler. And it's the same thing in grit is you learn to embrace the suck.
Yes.
And you challenge, for me and my kids, you challenge them to do hard things. And I'm comfortable to live in the tension of them not liking it at the moment. And, because it's the same thing in leadership, the basic 7, was it Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people? You begin with the end in mind. And I think my wife and I always talk about is like, I'm not parenting for right now. I'm forging and leading them for where they're going to be and where I want them to be. And so it's beginning with the end in mind. And I think it's the same thing as what a good leader would do. A good parent is going to tell their kid, why am I asking you to do this? And how is it going to benefit you, not just now, but where to come? And so that's one of the things that I have, that I do with my kids is the same thing I want to do as a leader. And the same thing same way I want to be led is help share the why.
Yeah.
Right? Why am I doing this? Why am I being asked to do this? And how is it going to benefit me? Or as a leader or teachers or educators or people who've led business or whatever, it's why are we doing this? Why am I asking you to do this hard thing? But how is it actually going to benefit you and make you stronger, whether it's emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever that may be? Usually it's all of those.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things.
I like that. Like you said, like live in that tension. And I'm like, I think that's hard for parents, right? Because you don't want your parental side doesn't want your kid to struggle or suffer ever, right? That seems like pain, but you have to put them in those situations, and you as a parent have to deal with that. That's your struggle to get them there, and I that's an important detail, I think.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is what you're doing is intentional, and it's so easy as a parent sometimes It's instant gratification. It's easy to say yes and make it easier for them. I do think there's something deep in us. You don't want to see your kids struggle. Sometimes it's painful to watch. Like we often end up talking about sports and when they lose, but man, those are huge moments. And if they understand why it is you're intentionally driving them towards something difficult,
that's right.
It's easier for them to buy in after. They say, all right, I trust it. And I had to have this conversation with my son. You are one of my favorite human beings on the planet, and there isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. That doesn't mean we need to be friends right now. That's not my job, right? My job is to try to prepare you for some of the challenging stuff you're going to face later on. Yeah. I read the email you put out. He sent it to me and said, hey, this is the guy we're going to, man, I read it right before I came here. I got jacked up. I was like, that's
the warrior man.
I was like, because I was like trying to give Eric some info about you, and I was like, this is a good insight. So I said, I just forwarded that email to him to read. So
I read it and I was like, it put to paper a lot. And this ends up a theme in our podcast a lot, which is cool because it's about youth, right? It's about how do you develop good, challenged young people in today's society where it's everything's easy. It's designed to make it easy for them. So it was cool reading that email, man. I am jacked up to hear about it.
It's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, and since this is I got to give credit to that, right? And I know I say it in there, and a lot of that is the way it's worded, right? So for me, and it sounds like for you men as well, is there is this kind of holy discontent, this conviction about when we look out into the culture, into society, what we see, right? And as law enforcement and you know, me spending the last several years as an executive leader, I think we see some similar gaps. And I'll say that because I think we'll naturally kind of get into where we see that root causes. It'll be kind of cool to hear it from your all's lens. But but the warrior man, and it's really cool now that we're at Liberty Launch Academy,
right?
And we're the warriors, right? And man, it just fits so good.
Yes.
But I was at a men's conference, my boys and I, and when we just moved here from Northwest Iowa in 23, in like March, April, we came out here for a startup company. I was asked to be the chief operating officer for one of the largest mealworm manufacturers in the U.S. and just had a lot of promise, but tough investor market. And so right at the last moment, we didn't get funded for a Series B funding round that we needed. And so for us, it kind of it set us, I mean, in our belief system, we felt like there's a whole lot more to this story, and maybe we'll get into that. But long story short, and that led us out here, we were in the Wenatchee area, and we were a part of this church called Grace City Church, and just blown away by all that they're doing. Like, they talk about raising some men, and just a bunch of men like doing some incredible things is going on there. And I was like, oh man, this is so good. And they brought a guy named John Lovell in, who was an ex-Army Ranger, and just a bad dude. And you can just tell, right? He's just a bad dude. He was speaking at the conference, and he leads this thing called the Warrior Poet Society. And so that's where a lot of that I got in, that shaped that email. Is my point to this, right. is I loved what he talked about, and it challenges me as a man too, and how I want to parent and lead. But one of the biggest things, and you saw that as well, is like, well, what does it look like to be a man, a warrior, right? What does this look like? And cool things. We'll talk about how grit comes into play with that, et cetera. And but the thing that really captivated me by this and challenged me and convicted me in this is that he talks about the most dangerous person in the room, right? And that most dangerous person in the room is the person that can be in the balance, right? And so they can control their emotions, and they can go to both extremes. If they need to go to the extreme of extreme violence for righteousness, for justice, they can do that. But they also can go this other extreme of complete gentleness and love and compassion and empathy and all that stuff, but they know how to be in the balance. And that just resonated very well to me about what does it really look like to be this man, or in this case, this warrior man.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I think I've tried to put words to that. I've lived in that duality for a long time. Like, from a young age, I started learning martial arts because fear, really. I mean, I was putting some violent encounters at a young age, and I realized I was lacking. So I started to study, and it's now 25 years later, and I've, done a lot in that world, and then been a cop. But having the balance of, yes, I can do violence. Like, I know how to do that. I'm pretty comfortable with that, but I can also be extremely loving. I think that balance in our household has been how we've raised our kids. And I think that it's a really powerful lesson for them. And that speaks to me too. Actually, I ordered that book, by the way, the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't live in either extreme.
No.
Right? Like, it's that confidence, and
right.
You're well-rounded and versed, and you're in the middle, but you can go to either because you've been there before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that comfort.
Yeah.
It's cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I think it sounds like you as well. Like, and I think he did. I think he just did a really cool and accurate job of painting with that holistic man. Probably the other one of the things that's helped me in parenting. And I don't always do this right. So this is definitely, I'm not on this thing going, oh, I've got this all figured out. No, I've fallen on my face many times in this, right? I've had some big failures. And so I'm going to state that out of the gate. But things that I strive for in this, there's another one, a guy by the name of Vodi Bakum, who put out the 4 Ps of biblical manhood. And he shapes that obviously out of the scripture. He talks about that the man is a prophet of his home. He's the priest of his home. He's the provider of his home, and he's the protector of his home. And essentially it's saying the same thing, right? So for me and my belief system, it's the fact that I am the prophet. I need to be pursuing this relationship to God. And there, if I'm doing that well, and I'm hearing from God through his word, then I'm also going to be the priest of the home, which is ultimately the shepherd or the leader of the home. And if I'm doing that well as well, I understand my responsibility as that warrior man. That's also going to be the protector of my home, right? It's my responsibility to protect my home in all aspects, right? So helping to keep an emotionally and mentally and physically safe home, spiritually safe home. And then as well as the provider, I'm called to work and to work hard and to lead by example that way. So that's another one for me that shapes it in a way that I can get around, and challenges me and convicts me, and it gives me a standard by which when I don't do that, then I know when I'm off the mark. And accountability,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And then you surround yourself with like-minded people that will hold you accountable. And then I think for us, I know for me, it's like, then I have to open myself up and say, bro, hold me accountable to this. If you see me living outside of the value set, then hold me accountable, because the stakes are too high.
And we all need that. It's not a one-man show. You surround yourself around people that are out there pushing themselves, and then you see them do that. It challenges you internally to go be accountable to their standards, right?
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. I think there's a component, or there's an aspect, or in my life, in my journey, like martial arts is great at the journey of jiu-jitsu, right? And just that white belt mentality that you never fully arrive.
Right. Yeah.
Same thing in wrestling, same thing in life and leadership. It's like, it's all under, I spent many years in continuous improvement. And I remember thinking about and continuous improvement, being trained in those methodologies and disciplines and tool sets, et cetera. It's really all about a system, right? It's like, it's a system that you learn. And I always think about, well, this is just life in general, right? I mean, it's by definition, continuous improvement is there's a beginning, but there's never an end. We're always improving. And so you take that to a leadership principle, John Maxwell, basically it's like, you'll never lead anybody where you're not willing to lead yourself, right? Or a leader is always learning. Otherwise, you're going to stop leading. You'll never have more influence. And that is just really it's cool this season of my life to kind of see all these things after, 25 years or so in of leading, and just in life, and 17 years of marriage, and now, parenting, and all of that. You kind of see all this in this journey, right? This all comes together, and it's really cool.
Yeah. That the jiu-jitsu analogy just speaks to me. I make analogies about jiu-jitsu like way too much, but it works. The levels to it, right? Like that white belt mentality. But even as you progress and you start and you're like, oh, I'm getting pretty good. Then you roll with somebody of a higher level and you're humbled and you're like, I don't know shit. And I mean, that's a great analogy for life though. In reality, probably leadership, business, you know what I mean? Like right when you feel like you're really starting to tackle this thing and you got it figured out, come across that person that pushes you way outside your comfort zone, you realize you don't know a damn thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That motivates me.
Use humility as a trait yourself, or life will humble you. The world will humble you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good point. So yeah, that same thing. I know for me, I remember this, like, with social media, you can go back and see your memories on Facebook or something that you'd done or posted.
Yeah.
I remember I saw this post that I did in 2016, and it was about, just kind of about like your character is really revealed when it's tested. Right. Posting out there, and that season of my life, man, I had right accountability around me. I had, these things were well, right. So this is a really, it was an eye opener for me 2 years later. And I didn't realize it at the time, but things weren't in right balance and order. Right. And so when tested, I didn't pass that test. I failed that test. Right. And so, and hurt my wife and hurt, I just saw this not that long ago in this memory feeling, 2016, that, and like 2 years later. And, when you reflect back, or you go deep within your own soul, and you can see for me, it was this, for me and my belief system, it was just this idea. It was this reminder that, man, the enemy's sharp. Right. So, and patient. And like the art of jiu-jitsu, I know, like, as a wrestler, it's like fast pace. That's my style. I like that. I like to wrestle that way. And when I went jiu-jitsu for a little bit, that got me in trouble pretty quick. Right. So, because the opponent knew how the art of being patient. Yeah. And so I take this guy down, right, use my strength, and then I'm quickly in some chokehold. I have no idea how I got there. Yes. But in life, so for me, I mean, take that same analogy for that. It's like this, that was the same reminder to me in the importance of maybe this is a good transition point, kind of in part of the 365 grit and the why behind that. Because that was a reminder to me, is like, wow, I didn't realize how far off I've gone. I didn't realize that. But when you stop and you get out of the inertia, you get out of the vortex, if you will, and you realize, like, wait a minute, like, we were just talking about that upstairs a little bit, right? About just say yes to even good things. And pretty soon, like, nothing's in rhythm or balance. Yes. And then pretty soon there's a fall, there's a stumbling, there's a wake up call. Right. And, I'm so thankful that I got an incredible wife and an incredible, by the grace of God, it's in a good place. It's a scar, and it's molded, and I've been tested many times since then, and passed. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And conquered. And, but it was an eye opener. And, I think here's, I guess I always go back to, like, my simple prayer has always been, God, make me the real deal. And that prayer for me is exactly that. Like, I want to be the real. I don't want to look good from the outside and be a whitewashed tomb, or, or, oh yeah, look, he's got it all together. And then, or like, oh, he can lead these people well, and then he can't lead his own family well. Right. That sucks. Right. And I don't want that. So my point is that's always been my prayer. And I think it's like, sometimes be careful what you pray for, because then I went through the refiner's fire in a lot of ways. And I think that's part of our journey. And depending on our outlook, it's, it's been a real good thing, even through that pain or through that, because it is forging the person I want to be. I want to stand at the end and be the real deal. Yeah. And, yeah,
I think there's nothing worse than, like, for example, the warrior who trains all his life and never gets tested, like that. I think that test is important, right? Mm-hmm. There's been a few. So I was a bouncer through college, and then went into becoming a cop for 14 years. So, like, there were times when I was tested, and it was unforeseen, a surprise attack, have you? And then those are the best. Like, there's so much. This is such a weird thing to say, but there's so much joy in that for me, because the times that I was tested, and I persevered, and things just happened like the way I was trained to do it, and I survived, and like that feeling, there's nothing better than that. I think that's similar, right? Like you prepare for these moments, and then to have it happen when you're not expecting it, and you have to react in the way you were trained, or the way, your principles, and to succeed, like that is,
it goes so far beyond testing you physically and your skills. That's like a test of your mentality and mindset, when most people are operating in, it goes down the levels, the white, yellow, orange, red, and black. Most people are walking around in white or yellow. So to get jumped and not see it coming and not foresee that, then you get tested mentally.
Yeah.
That's cool, getting some perspective here. And you talk about a time in your life that was really challenging and difficult. Man, it's so easy to look back on those, and in the moment, there's some emotions tied to that. But I've had several of those in my life, 2 major ones, right? I'm so grateful for them. That truly prepared me for the next challenge later in life. It laid the groundwork. That you talk about veering off course, and what you learn as you get older and as you experience shortcomings or failures, even, right? Those course corrections are a lot easier if you know what to recognize early and just kick it back on. It's when they get down the road and you're so far off that it takes this big, massive course correction. So as I've gone through some of those, it's so much easier, and recognize it with my son, especially. Hey, this is just a little deviation. It's a lot easier to kick this back now than way later. It's going to take something massive.
Yeah. We just had one of those in our household. Our son was getting a little too into video games. So we had a couple of nights. It was not just one discussion, a couple of nights, and they were hard talks. And it was like, hey, what kind of man do you want to be? Like, you're not a kid anymore. He's 15. It's like you're at the precipice of manhood. Now is the time where you have to make hard choices, and like, you need to decide. You have to buy in. I'm really just a little bit of a guide at this point. That's it. And it was emotional. Like, I think he recognized in himself, like, he wasn't happy with who he was becoming. And, he decided he was going to do like 2 weeks of detox from video games and see how it goes. And it does not take long with kids. Like, once they get out of that world and their head is not always in there, like, they start to, be creative again and have different energy. And it's like, and not be such a jerk. Like, he was kind of being a jerk to me and mom. And, probably because he wasn't happy with himself, is my guess.
Good on you, though, man.
Right.
Like,
it was hard.
You get his buy-in, though. You didn't just say no video games, or you didn't go throw it in the lake, which I'm sure is tempting. I've had that with cell phones. I was like, I'm gonna run your phone over. I've threatened that very thing. Put it behind the truck and run it over. But good on you, because you explained just what you were saying before, the why. Hey, what is it your goals are for you? And just on the way here, when I knew we'd talk about stuff like this, I'm going to go back and we're going to have that conversation at the age of 13. What is it you want people to know when they think of you? Like, what core characteristics do you think are valuable that you want people to think of when they think of you?
Yeah.
That's a powerful question. Right. And so, I'd say it too. Cheers on you, man.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, awesome. And it's like, I'm always on this path. I'm always trying to learn and better myself too. And I think something I've learned recently is you literally need to ask yourself the hard questions. I do a lot of journaling now, and that really helps me get clarity on these ideas that are just bouncing around in my head. So I'll start writing things down and, eventually formulate, okay, like, here's an area I need to work on, or And so I think if we can apply those principles to our kids, especially at an early age, when I was that age, I didn't have a clue. Nobody was having these talks with me.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it was on that same podcast I heard that you guys had done, but it is it is different today with our sons and daughters. It's a different culture of what they have access to than what we did, right? And so
their sphere of influence is so big.
Yeah, and so and I think that's right. Like what we said, like for me earlier, and what you just did as well, and it sounds like you as well, is this like, I'm okay with this tension because I'm not training them for now. I'm training them like Caden's got 4 more years.
Right.
Like it's just
you're almost there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, they can be emotional thinking about that. Like he's got 4 years in my home, and then he's going to go off. Likely he's going to be wrestling somewhere. I wrestle in college. I know what those are like. I know what that group can be like. Right. And lessons learned, like for my own self. And irregardless, he's going out into the breach, right? And I love that when we're talking about this, is that warrior way. I love that. That was kind of the theme of this conference. So I kind of snagged that from there, but I love that. I love that military term about that, because I think that is the root cause of what we see today. I've seen it for the last 20 years, 25 years. I've been around some really awesome leaders, and I've been around some leaders who suck, and they may be able to drive a bottom line. But the way they do it is, at the end of it, is not what I define as success. And what moved us from Iowa out here was a testing moment for me that put all of what I hold dear and what I want to be on the line. And I started to get put in for me and my value set in compromising positions. And it was really painful. It's a lot that I couldn't unravel in this time. It wouldn't be appropriate anyways. But the fact of the matter is, it was a testing, and it rocked me for who I thought this guy was. And I thought I thought the depth of our relationship was stronger than that. I thought there was a stronger bond. And then I just watched what I would say is out of greed. I watched how he would put myself and how he'd put others in the organization in positions basically like they were really cogs in a wheel, but he would state up here and all these values and what our why and our purpose is, but I watched that not match up. All right. And we all have blind spots where I'm perfect. I was not, and I'm not perfect. I don't say that, but over time, over a period of time, you can kind of get to see who is the real person underneath it. Right. And my point of all that is I see this, there's that gap, right, that I've seen as leaders who then have decisions that they make, right, have an incredible impact on those that they're shepherding or leading in the organization, right? That affects their families and their livelihoods and their engagement. And I kind of forgot where I was going a little bit, but I think for me, part of all that is I've seen that for the last several years at that level. Maybe it's just kind of where it is.
Yeah.
And then I see now the educational system, right? So we're talking about, like, I guess I like 4 years left with my kid, right? And he's going to go out into the world.
4 summers. I think about that.
Yeah, it's just nuts.
Nothing, right?
Somebody said that to me and said, think about it. You have 4 summers left. And then they're out in the world.
They're out in the world. And who are they going to be, right? And so, and I'm so confident in him and who he's grounded, but I have those 4 summers left under my home. And how, and I think about this is our vision at LLA. We've kind of changed our mission and vision up at Liberty Launch Academy. So we're a private school, our second year in. And I love how this has all come together too. Just the whole story of all this is really cool. So, it's really incredible. It's something that you can't make up. It is totally a God thing, and how all this has come together, and just a bunch of like-minded people coming together. Right. And not all, some of them are getting pruned out. I mean, honestly,
I've seen that. Yep. For the better, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate in some ways because, here's a spoiler alert of where I'm going. The problem is the home.
Right.
It is the home. And it is a passivity of fathers and husbands. Ultimately, I think that's where it ultimately rests. And because of that, then it just spirals. So if I look at it, I look at the world, the worldview, and I think we talked about this the other night on the Feast of the Magi. I think it's really cool, right? And as I was thinking about that, it's like we are all engaged in what's called the Great Conversation. It's been going on since time immemorial, right? And it's really around these kind of 4 areas of, we're all partaking in it. And so we're wrestling with it internally. Some people haven't gone deep enough and they haven't settled yet on so it's really around these 4 areas, right? Origin, meaning, morality, and hope. It's really where these core questions revolve around, right? Is there a God or not? Or is it just relativism? Right? Is it just like what, and is there meaning? What's the purpose? Right? We hear that so much today is like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? There, come sign up for this. We'll help you find your purpose. Yeah. Right. And then there's the idea, is there an objective reality to right and wrong, morality? And then is there hope? Like, is there anything after this, right? This amazing complex life that we're given, is there anything out of that? I mean, we're all engaged in this conversation in one way or another. Some people are very myopic in it. They're just up here in the kiddie pool because they're not willing to go deep into that and wrestle with hard questions. And instead they look at it as it's hard instead of embracing that journey, right? There's so much discovery that can be done. There's going to be so much still unknown, but all that to say is we're all engaged in that. How we view that is how we show up in the world, right? And I've seen it as an executive leader and then as a coach. You've all seen this in law enforcement, right? And we all just see it in life in our value set. And it comes down to me is it is the fabric that holds society together is the home. It's the family. And it affects everything. It affects the way we show up. It's a way that affects the way we parent. It affects the way we lead. So I'll go back to what I was thinking I was starting to say here is the Liberty Launch Academy. We really spent some time. What is our mission and what is our vision? And our mission is we are liberating education because the education system is broke. It's a broken model, the public educational system.
No disagreement.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how somebody could agree that it's working because it's not working. So we're liberating education through experiential learning and personal development. In order to, our vision is to forge principled leaders who will positively impact the world, right? So when Caden is out, so for us, we view ourselves as partners, like we're partnering with the family. And I think that's what a healthy church is supposed to do as well, is they're partnering with the family. There are always extremes and outliers where the families abdicated their role, right? They've just said, no, I'm going to drop it off. We've had some of those that aren't making it in LLA, or those that have kind of done the same thing. I just drop them off for you to educate my kid.
Right.
Well, that's probably not going to go real well, right? So,
well, in a lot of ways, public school systems, that's what they tell you they're going to do.
Right.
Right. We control their education. You do not. And, we're going to push certain things on your kids, regardless of whether or not it falls in line with your family's values.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're so right about the home front. So that conversation we had with my son recently, I realized that my wife and I have been failing lately because our kids are very easy at this point. It's almost like, hey, they're good, right?
Right.
We could take a step back and we can focus on ourselves and our business or whatever. And we've been doing that. And we caught ourselves, and that was like, hey, well, hold on now. We still got some time here, and we're still it's very important. Our influence on them is still very important and very much needed, even though they're very easy kids. They're well behaved. Like, we don't really have problems with them. But I think it was a failure of our leadership in the home that kind of led to this path where our son was like getting fully addicted to video games, and that was a hard realization. But it was, it was on us. And then we had these difficult conversations, starting with me and my wife having these conversations and recognizing that fault, and then carrying that over to our kids. And they're both on a 2-week no games detox hiatus currently, to be reevaluated at the end. It may continue. We'll see. But that started with a hard conversation between me and my wife, and trying to recognize where we were messing up.
Right. Well, I think you said something before that spoke to me. He's talking about passivity at home, right?
Yes.
I think it goes further than that. I think as a society, it's the popularization of passivity at home.
Yeah.
Hard parenting is frowned upon now.
Yeah.
Right. Like, even if you watch news or you listen to other programs or you listen to influencers or those that, have a lot of following within society, hard parenting is frowned upon. Everything is supposed to be gentle, and you're supposed to use kid gloves. Where in reality, that's the last thing.
That's right.
They need checked, and they need that balance. I hate to compare kids to dogs, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sometimes dogs really just need to know where they are in the pack, and they're the most comfortable. If you've ever seen a young male dog that is pushed into a spot where they have to be super uncomfortable, fidgety, unhealthy, like, you can almost see it physically. Kids sometimes just need to know where they are.
Yeah.
Know what the standards are, clear expectations, and then hold them accountable.
Yeah.
But popularization of passivity, that's been a thing in our society, it seems like, for the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, we should use this term in accountability. A culture of accountability is one that says I care. Right?
Yes.
I care enough that I will I will go head on. I will address the hard thing because I care enough about you. And that goes back to like in the beginning of this, where talk about kind of sharing the why, right? With my kids. And boy, this is just awesome too, to see the balance of my wife and I. It's like, she is just, she's definitely got the grace card, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
nurturing and
the nurturing and the grace. And so, part of that fighting for our marriage too is getting on the same page with that stuff, right? Yep. And just talking about, where we, and for me though, I've got to be careful because I don't want to go too far in it, right? But because I'm going to hold accountability, I'm going to keep the expectations high. And there's also parts where the father needs to still nurture and love and,
of course,
and show that. So, and it's a sweet blessing. I mean, gosh, if you got a heart, you're going to want to do that as well, right? But I know for me and my wiring and the forging that I know to make sure that I'm very deliberate and conscious about that aspect as well, because they need that. One thing I appreciate about my father is my father always, I'm unfortunately, I came from a divorced home, and largely, I think that is a huge problem as well. It's still, it's just only getting worse. It's about 50% of first marriages end in divorce. And then it's like 65 to 70% of the second marriages end in divorce, right? So, I mean, it's a crazy number. Now, for me, there's always outliers to these things. I always say this is like, man, in giving that situation, they were both young. I think my mom just listened to wrong advice, unfortunately, from her family. And didn't stick with it, right? Because it's hard. And, but with that, I've always had a father who was engaged, right? So, more so than even others where it's like they're physically present, but relationally unengaged, right?
Right.
And I mean, it's just as bad as being a physically absent father. I mean, it's even almost worse because they're there and they have the time and then they don't. And then they don't address the hard things. They allow this to see the back of the heads of their kids, and they're on their cell phones or games or whatever. And it's like, and you guys did. And you're like, hey, wait a minute. Like, no, we have to fight that as well. Like, no, you're not going to do that. Like, we're going to create these moments. But we see that aspect of it. I'm thankful for my father, though, who's always been relationally engaged and even physically present, turned down promotions to stay within, 30 miles of us, living an active role in our life. And that is incredibly important. So I'm thankful for that with him, because he also showed affection, and he still does to this day. And so we need that as well. And I think that balances out when I push my boys, right? And I push them to do really hard things, or I correct them in behaviors, right? Or whatever. And I push that. They know by now over time, like it takes a good relationship over time. There's a trust there. They know that I'm doing it because I love them, and I'm going to keep the expectation high, and I'm going to help them get to that. And so Caden, my oldest, get there, and Landon to get there, and Evie, my daughter, to get there, and Brendan, my youngest, to get there. That I'm not going to lower the expectation level. Now, they're all uniquely wired in gifts and talents and strengths and weaknesses. It's my responsibility as their shepherd to understand that with them and help them in their way, but I'm not going to lower the standard. And so I think that's another component for how I'm approaching it as a father. And
you said it though, it's trust.
Yeah.
It's this pattern of behavior that you have established with them. It's not just empty words and saying, I'm your father, you need to trust me. You're there and you're present in person through their journey, through their successes and their failures. So when you're telling them to do something difficult or to make this course correction, they know where it's coming from. It's coming from, this is hard. I know it's hard. It's hard for me, because holding kids accountable, teenagers accountable is hard, right? Yeah. I'm choosing that difficult path for me and for you, because I know at the end of this, and you trust that it's for your own benefit and ours. Society needs good young people, men and women.
That's right.
Good for all of us.
Yeah. Just leadership. I mean, you are, and this is honestly a concept that I have never really put words to until fairly recently, of like, I have to be a leader in my home.
Yes.
And my wife's a leader as well in her own way. And we have our different strengths, but that's important. And like literally leading by example, which we've always done for the kids. I just never really even verbalized it in my own head and like looked at it that way, and intentionally started making moves because of that.
And your kids watch you in those moments, right? Yeah. That's where they get that first taste of what leadership looks like, is how you do lead it in your own home. And I think from the sounds of it, all three of us do that the same way. I enjoy explaining the buy-in. There's certain times where I don't have time to explain it.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
I always say that if I walk into Walmart and I've arrested somebody and it's one of those that's real, real bad, if I say, take the kids out to the car, please, this isn't the time to ask me, well, why?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some moments,
yeah.
just bounce. Cool. Like that's bad, dude. But
Yep.
other times I enjoy explaining the why, how it's good for them, how it's good for our family, what the long-term goal is. And I've gotten much better at not responding emotionally. Because usually if I'm mad or I'm attempting a course correction and I don't know why I'm doing it, that's a me issue, not a them issue. That's an emotional response from dad, and I need to fix it.
That's a great observation.
Good leaders don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and good leaders will, I mean, I think we probably all had this as well. It's pretty humbling to go to your children and ask them for forgiveness because you were out of bounds emotionally or whatever. You responded in an emotional state. And so that's humbling for sure, but it also is a great teaching moment for them, right? So
done that many times,
Be humble. I am
more than I can remember.
Yes, I say please learn from my mistakes. That way you don't have to make the same ones yourself. I've made plenty, and I've definitely had those moments. I shouldn't have responded the way that I did. That's not what I want to model for you. I apologize for that.
I always say she's the talent and the brains behind this thing for sure. Like she's a rock star. And it really started, how are we on time?
Oh, right? Good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
So, I just want to make sure to be respectful of that.
No, you're fine.
So, one of the things that, I was on a school board. I was elected as a school board member back in my hometown in a season of our life. And, at that same time I was, I was reading, Angela Duckworth's book on grit, and at the same time, if you got elected as a school board member, you had to agree to go to the state conference, right? So I go to the state conference. I hear it in her book, on her TED talk on Angela Duckworth. She has a TED talk on it. Rena and I did one as well, but it's not in comparison. At that time, I'm hearing the Department of Education state that if there was 3 things that 21st century students should learn above everything else, it was grit, tenacity, and perseverance. And so, and I'm on the school board, and I'm hearing at a conference the keynote that if there was 3 things that 21st century students, this is from the Department of Education.
Then where are their goals towards that? Like you identified, I agree.
Exactly. I'm like, amen. Like, I'm in the back. Like it's like revival's going to break out. Like, oh my gosh, I get it. But I'll say I'm on the school board. I'm like, then why in the world are we not teaching it?
Right.
Where did this go? Right. Because it's gone the opposite.
Show me a lesson plan directed towards achieving that.
100%. And so it began this kind of this discontent, this conviction aside. Well, it just so happens that at that time I'm on this leadership kind of development project. And this is where Rena and I, Dr. Kirkland and I got connected, and our family's very like-minded. And I knew she teaches this stuff, and I got this passion for this stuff. And long story short, I just said, Rena, you want to do this thing? You want to start this and help be a part of the solution? And that kind of kicked off our journey. So what we did though and we're still doing it. We've really, some of it's just been because of, she's a full-time teacher and parent as well, and wife, and our journey and my job is a lot of that has taken a lot of time, but we've also been very deliberate in what we're creating. The whole goal though is if grit is a greater predictor of success than even IQ, which is what the research shows, and we know what the Department of Education is stating, then we wanted to be very deliberate in our own self and to help solve that. Okay, well, what does that look like? How do we create a curriculum? And it's not just for students. We've done some workshops for organizations. We've done we work with athletes. My own sons, they're going through this organically. So what we've done is, just like in organizations or anything, or even the home, it's a system, right? It's usually a system issue than it is a behavior issue, because the right systems will help call out the right or wrong behaviors, right? They'll reinforce the right ones, or they'll help identify the wrong ones. So we created this process through science and experience that we help individuals or teams or organizations of any sort to learn how to build it, because you can actually build grit like a muscle, which is pretty incredible. And if it's got a greater predictor of success than IQ, that's also good news, like for myself anyways. Right. So, so we've spent the last several years really crafting this process, because I didn't want it to be, nor did Rena want it to be just something like, oh, that sounds great. Oh, that sounds catchy. Oh, that's like a great logo or whatever. And it really doesn't have that impact. And so I think the other thing is, I think you said it earlier about instant gratification. Well, that isn't grit, right? And that isn't what that looks like, because it's not instant gratification.
Grit is embracing the suck.
It is embracing the suck.
For the journey's sake.
That's right. Yeah. And that's a great point, because what the research shows, and I think we would go, well, yeah, that makes sense, is joy, right? This whole idea today is like, I just want happiness. I want to be happy, right? And, well, that's a false marker, because there is fluctuating happiness and there's authentic, stable happiness. Fluctuating happiness is where this culture, and our westernized culture, goes and tries to find it. And it's exactly what the whole great conversation. Well, let me see if I can tie this super quick here, because it's really relevant. You have like the whole warrior man, right?
Yeah.
And John Lovell's like part of that great conversation. There was always a quarrel between the philosopher and the poet. The poet would have been more the theologian, right? And there's always been this quarrel. And depending on where you lined on that, the philosopher or the poet is shaped the thought patterns through culture. So you can see it. You Friedrich Nietzsche's and Karl Marx's of them, right? That's been the philosophical line. And then you have the poet line. So you can trace that thought back to some of the greats that have been those greatest minds. And that we fall into one of those categories. That's just where we're at, because this is this quarrel. And so this whole idea about the system of grit, right, and developing that is helping us to engage into that conversation, I should say, I guess. And so you have this quarrel going on. You have this quarrel between the two. If grit is this greater predictor of success, and part of that is defining what success looks like, and part of that is in wrestling deeper into the difference of happinesses in which we are trying to find that, right? So we're either trying to find it in the Aristotle would talk about the appetitive soul, or Plato would talk about the appetitive soul, and they would use this illustration of it's between the appetite and the bed. And so it's either in food and gluttony, and you always want more and more, or in sex, you always just want more and more, right? Where that they would use that illustration in that, but it's fluctuating. Right? You have it for a moment and then it fleets, and then you're going to go try to find that happiness somewhere else.
Today's culture, you can add drugs to that.
To drugs, right?
Same thing.
Right. That addictive, that appetitive soul. It
Video
creates
games.
this appetite.
Yeah.
Video games. It creates an appetite. That's how they market it, right? They market it to do that. Then there's authentic, stable happiness is my point. And you hit something that's really, really important. It's a core to this whole process. That authentic, stable happiness, I'd say, goes deeper, and it's a joy. And joy is actually experienced in the journey, right? It's more so even the destination. As a wrestler, especially at the college level, and things I wish I would have known now more, as the poet mind of mine has been more shaped than the warrior side of it, because I kind of lost that why in it. What I watched happen, no exaggeration, I'd watch people put their entire identity into become a national champion. Is that a wrong goal or pursuit? Absolutely not. Caden wants to be that, right? Yeah. It's not a wrong goal or pursuit at all. But if your entire identity is wrapped up into that, what I watched happen is when they didn't get it, whether it was through injury or they just got beat that day, their identity was put into that, and they are still a mess today because
crumbled a foundation.
That's right. They didn't have a foundation, right? That's why the old proverb is about building it on solid ground, right? Not on sand. And so they didn't have that. So there is this dark side of grit as well that we help people to be aware of. So we've developed a 4-step process. That process initially starts with reflect, and it has to start there because it is an instant gratification. And so part of that reflect is answering those tough questions. We're not telling, like the whole goal of education is to produce critical thinkers, right? So we're not telling them what to think, but we're going to teach them how to think, right? And we're going to help that individual, whether it's a student or an adult or an organization, to say, what is your why? And is it the right why? You have to settle that. right? So we're doing this as parents for kids. Like, you have to settle that through critical thinking. You're engaged in this conversation. What is that? And then what is your irresistible target? So we've taken the word grit and we've used it to define how we want people to think of it. So we use GRIT as grinding through resistance to an irresistible target. And if your irresistible target is right, you will naturally grind through the resistance because you're going to face resistance. But if you have the right mindset that can be built, that grit muscle growing, you will do, like what you just said just a minute ago, is you'll find joy in the journey.
Right.
So that person that didn't become a national champion, yes, if they can go back and say, man, I've done everything that was in my control, my locus of control, what I can control, and my identity is in something greater than that, then what I'll actually do is I realize, man, I didn't get that, but look how far I've grown. So if I started from this wall and my target was to get over to this wall and it was a national champion, but I fell short, I got to this bookshelf right here. Look at how much I just grew. Right. That growth right there is going to transfer and translate into all aspects of my life. And that's the beauty about building grit. And so our process is helping people to do that. So the 4 steps is really helping in our system. Like in business models, right? You want to create a system that's repeatable, sustainable, and scalable. Can it happen autonomously through a habit? We always know this, right? Before anything can first become a habit, it has to first be practiced as a discipline. So we help a system. We created a system that will systematically, deliberately help the individual or team work through that process. So the first part of the 4-step process, reflect on what are your identity, your values, your irresistible target. The second step of that is to reset. What is getting in the way? What are the barriers? And it could be people, right? Or stinking thinking. We know how powerful, how negative thoughts have such power over us physically, emotionally, spiritually, et cetera. So the resetting is going to identify and remove those barriers. So then the third step is to refocus. Refocus, and you may need to reprogram, make adjustments to the plan. Now that I've done the proper resetting, then I can refocus on my clear, irresistible target and the goal process to get there, right? So helping them to break down to here's my goal, my irresistible target. Now I can break those down into intermediate goals and into daily tactical steps, which actually proves to have more success in goal achievement by helping the individual or team do that. Then the last step is to re-engage. So now it's not just like, oh, I just hit the easy button, I can start all over again. If you just do that, that's the definition of insanity, right? Mm-hmm. Which says I'm doing the same thing over and over again, getting different results. I would argue that you will get different results. You'll get worse results. So these 3 steps beforehand have to be there in order to re-engage again with deliberate, intentional practice.
A relentless follow-up.
It's right. Yes, exactly. Just being fanatically disciplined. And if you do that, then that 4 steps actually can be 365. I do it. Caden can do it. Landon, my second oldest, is starting to do this automatically. You can just go through this as a habit. Like, I just think this way.
Right.
I can go back to the reflect. I can go back to the reset. I can go back to
training your brain.
That's right. And you can build, this is what we call and how we identify, this is how you can build it. So it's great to say, yep, you can build grit like a muscle. We've spent a lot of years now helping people learn this is exactly here is your program. And you can tailor fit that program to the uniqueness of the individual. One of our graphics, if you will, or logos is a heartbeat with grit written in the middle of it. And that's because each of us have an individual heartbeat, right? There's only one of us. And so that helps the individual individualize it, make it like, this is mine. And so that's why, again, because we want people to show up authentically. They'll be better humans. They'll be better fathers, husbands, wives, children, leaders, right? Contributors to society by this and through this process. So that's 40,000 Cliff is
freaking awesome, dude.
And we're building that. We're building that into our Liberty Launch Academy curriculum,
which is amazing.
Yeah. So our students will come out with this then, and they'll come out with continuous improvement discipline. This all goes together. Right. This is stuff that you don't even get at the college level, right? And so then we go into the business world and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in talent management stuff because they didn't learn it in school. They didn't learn it in college, but there's this huge gap in how to go show up. And no matter what discipline it's in, we have to retrain the leader, the person, in how to lead. because we're not doing it in the public education system.
Right.
And so this is our way to help solve that. So, man, incredibly excited about it. And
well, how could you not? Just hearing you talking, number one, your passion shines through clearly, but you're speaking to some. I've looked at our public education system; it's been missing for so long.
Yeah.
Why is it our young people aren't coming out of school ready to go to work?
Yeah.
Right. Where are they challenged? Where are they pushed? Where can they handle adversity? Long thought coping mechanisms, and if they aren't getting that from home, where are they going to get it?
That's right.
Sometimes public education, it just seems like all they're taught, they come home and all of a sudden they're victims of everything.
Yeah.
Where is the resilience and grit and determination to fight through some adversity? And they get none of that.
Yeah.
So I'm such a believer in sports, but it's badass to have programs out there that are forward thinking like that.
Yeah.
Really what we're talking about is the throwback. We talk about how Coeur d'Alene's a throwback community, right?
Yep.
But what you're talking about is throwback traits that were necessary for survival 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But our comfortable society no longer needs it, right? It's all about being comfortable. And when you talk about happiness, I just hear that as like instant gratification. It's dopamine. Our entire society revolves around little spurts of dopamine, and we've conflicted that with happiness.
Yeah.
Whereas the journey and accomplishment and really feeling good about yourself and your family and your body and your mind, and that's real happiness.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's cool.
Joy.
Yes.
It's a joy. Joy doesn't mean
confidence and comfort.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. I think for me, I learned this through, I mean, we've gone through some pretty big trials over the last few years through that testing, right? That kind of that forging. I love that Proverbs 27 is talks about iron sharpens iron, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you get yourself surrounded with the right people too, who will sharpen each other, we've gone through some really tough trials. We were tested, we passed the test. And in that, even through some really dark moments in that, I can say, this is the weird thing. It's so hard to explain this. I had joy. I still had joy in that. Right. There's a moment. I mean, I remember a moment where, just to not to mince like this ambiguity in there, what happened was because when I was tested in my character, I decided that I'm no longer going to follow this guy.
Yeah.
And I had some surroundedness, my grit circle around me. So this is like practicing what you preach, right? So this is like, okay, so I'm in this, I got the circle around me, just getting good sound advice so that I'm not leading on emotion. And in that moment to try to stay grounded in that. A lot of things were happening even around that. So long story short is and there's just stuff that you can't make up. So I cannot say this without this. Like the morning of that, my time with this guy in this company would no longer be. I thought it was because I was going to have another chief operating officer job because I was being pursued by another guy that I have a lot of respect for. And I saw this as like, okay, God, you're showing up. Yep, you're going to get this guy. I can't wait to go there. And I had my resignation letter for like 6 months in my hands ready to give to this guy. I was like, I'm going to show you, dude. Good luck. Right. And that's just not how God wanted this thing to go. So the morning of, so I was journaling, such a powerful thing.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And I knew going into the year, I knew like the Lord was telling me, like, get geared up. You're going to war, right? You're going into the breach. If I can use that terminology, I put it back now. So I'm going into the breach and was totally tested. And I can say I did it always great in this, like passing. It was some tough moments. And so long story short in this, I get all the way to like October and I'm the Lord telling me, is like, you need to start journaling. Because I've had some really cool moments when I was journaling to go back and go, oh man, like I can't make this up. Right. And so that was October. I started journaling. Well, then on November 9th, that morning of, I felt the Lord tell me, I want you to pray very specifically. I don't have like these. It wasn't an audible voice. It was just this really clear impression. And, again, I thought it was as well, I'm probably going to get this offer that was supposed to be coming. It was, so I write down like, God, I thank you for my family. And I thank you for all this during this trial, because I was going in every day, just being put in these positions that I was just watching these people really suffer. And I was kind of this barrier in between them. Right. And I wrote down, so God, I pray that you would deliver me, and I pray you would do so today. That's exactly what happened.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah. And, but the cool thing about this, all this to say is I say that one is because for me, I passed the test. I, in my own pride, had this letter carried around. My wife would bring me lunch every day and she'd go, did you do it yet? Did you do it yet? And I was like, no, I didn't do it yet. I didn't feel like I was supposed to do it yet. I didn't feel like I was supposed to do it yet. Had I done that, the Lord's provision wouldn't have been there in a way, because all of my metrics were exceeding. I mean, we had incredible results. And I would, obviously, if I went in and did it, I wouldn't have got my bonus. I wouldn't have had these things. So, but it wasn't in my control and my timing. And so for me, it was a great reminder of who's ultimately in charge. And what I got to see is I got to see him show up. And so I say all that is because that was part of the pillar for us, for me to see great joy. I had really hard moments in that time frame. It's never happened to me before. It happened to me for the right reasons for me and my character set, because I said, I'm not following this guy anymore. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. And because of the things that I hold dear, the things that I want to be revered as a leader, as a person, et cetera. Again, it always takes two to tangle. I'm not saying I was perfect in my leadership or anything like that, but the core value set was broken and disconnected, and that put me on the test, right? So that's my whole point of that. But what happened when I say all this is, like, I remember this distinct moment where I had some really sweet blessings for a few months while we were deciding what we're going to do. I had all kinds of opportunities still, which is, again, boy, I just wanted to be super clear, right? God, all right, you're into that. So bring us to this. And there's like, okay, now I got like 3 or 4 things that are all really good opportunities. I'm like, what? Okay, well, which one of these am I supposed to do? Right. And so, but all that going on is, I remember a moment where we were in Walmart, my wife and I hadn't had a vacation in years. Now I have all this time with my wife. And I remember in Walmart, I'm thinking, in one half of the store, I'm going, this is awesome. Like, wow, I get this great time with my wife. I get over to the camping aisle and I'm breaking down in the aisle because I'm just feeling like, what in the world is going on? I should be working. I should be doing this, right? And I'm breaking down in the camping aisle. But my point of it is all those emotions there. I had to go back to these moments. All of that in that trial for us, I could say, like, right now where I'm at, the community I'm surrounded around, what we're doing and what was going to happen as a school and this community is being built here, all through that trial, there was great joy. And staying and grinding through the resistance to an irresistible target for me, living through this, constantly having to reflect on what is my deeper why, resetting, taking captive of those negative thoughts that we have. This part of this process helps us to do that. Realize the negative thought pattern. If you had an example, I'd show you a physical example right now, how powerful the thought pattern is. If you want to do that, we can do it after this as well. But how powerful the thought patterns is, and how important it is to identify that, because you can change it. But if you don't recognize it, you'll spiral, right? You'll spiral out of this false thinking, this stinking thinking. And so going through all that, my own self, is my whole point of this, having to do that every single day, kept me focused on the right things. It did not rob myself of joy, even through the trial, right? So it wasn't like, oh, I'm really happy. No, but I had great joy in it. And now on this part of it, I was like, man, all worth it.
And I didn't have these skills. And this is something like in my 30s, I started to explore, of like understanding myself in that way. To think about a kid having that, that foundation being laid in elementary school. Mm-hmm. By the time they get out, like, it's insane to think about the power that kid could have with that kind of foundation.
Recognizing the importance of challenging themselves every day and taking it to a point where maybe they're a little uncomfortable.
100%.
Yeah.
That's where growth happens.
I mean,
embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck.
I mean, and that's forging future leaders. I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you guys are getting the base to, absolutely excel in the world that we're moving into, because, what is it? Soft times create weak men. And I mean, there's a lot of weak men and women out there that are coming up in today's society because no one's giving a damn about them.
Right.
And, I look at it as an advantage for my own kids, and
that's right.
You guys are going to have way ahead of that.
Well, I'm going to end up swinging by the Liberty Launch Academy.
This was actually this was a ploy to get you to bring your kid.
I'll bring him in there.
Well, my boy needs a good wrestling partner. He can't be me all the time. So man, let's go.
He sounds like a monster. It'd be fun to watch him. Like I said, mine's at 102. He's all right, but that'd be fun to watch. And he needs a little humbling. We were just talking about it. He'll get some grit out of that whooping that he would inevitably get. But that'd be great.
What grade's your boy in?
8th.
Okay.
So 8th grade.
He'd be around my daughter a bit. We'll talk about that later. But
he's doing great. So he's going to get whooped by his son, whooped by you. He needs all of it.
It's perfect.
He needs all of it. He needs all the whooping he can get.
Yeah,
reformation takes place
for sure.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the next learning module or whatever for the survival. That's coming up starting this next week.
So what is different for those that don't, because Seth told me a little bit about it when we were out driving around. Like, what's a day at Liberty Launch Academy like for a student? Let's take an 8th grader.
Oh yeah.
What's that look like for them as compared to like a public school system?
One, that it's not measured by seat time, right? So they're not in some standard little desk, right, and then just kind of going through the day through these periods like that. So there's elements where, they start out each morning with a warrior wake up. So they go through in that, and they have kind of their mentors that will invest in them, kind of kicking off the day, right? And there's gonna be a lot of growth that happens even in what that looks like, but there's that element. They have PE class isn't your PE class. PE classes are doing AMRAP and strength training every day. So
yes,
they're it's
awesome.
They're coming upstairs sucking wind, and they're learning. They're learning to push themselves physically, right? We understand how important that is, even mentally. So there's that aspect to it. The project-based learning is fantastic. So like the survival theme. So we have these themes throughout the year. So we're coming into, after break, will be survival. And so if you were looking at, so we built this, what we call this LLA house. It'll be coming out. And so the purpose of that, I wish we had this up to kind of talk about it, but we'd have our foundation, right? So our foundation talk about what the liberating education, the mission through experiential learning and personal development. That then is important because everything else is built upon that. So then we have our warrior way, which is kind of the value set that we hold our students accountable. And so they understand, well, what does that warrior way look like? It's under an acronym of the word REACH. And so there's that aspect of it. Then inside of the home, what would be the differentiator from us than anywhere else? And I think even against many of the private educations systems is that they're going to have project-based learning. So they have these projects underneath these themes like survival. So they're going to do projects. So one of the coolest projects that I saw earlier this year when I first got there was we had somebody from the city come in, and they were presenting to our 3rd and 4th grade class and our 5th and 6th grade class. And so they come in and they pitched this opportunity, right? This problem that they're trying to solve. And it was around this park, and they wanted this park to be more inclusive. So they're for special needs. So they bring this idea to our students. This is 3rd and 4th graders. They bring this to our students, and they present what they're trying to do. They leave for like 3 weeks. Our students go to work on trying to solve that. So they build up come up with these ideas, brainstorm these ideas of, well, what if we can make a zip line for a wheelchair person in a wheelchair, right? Or they helped come up with these opportunity in the community in which we reside.
Right.
And so now they're being active contributors to the society as a 3rd and 4th grader. They're being a part of making it better, right? So I think there's just so many other things that tie into this. That group comes back from the parks, and I can't remember their name, but then our students now present in front of them. They've made up, so they're learning everything. So the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, all the thing under STEAM that we'd have, that all the essential core standards, all this stuff now gets applied in this entire project. And so what they're able to do, and then it's creating experiential learning, right? So then they're able to take that project, they mock up, right? So they mock up what their ideas are, help to improve and foster greater inclusivity into these parks for special needs. Then they come back, they present that. They have a presentation, they ask questions, they engage in dialogue.
Which goes so far beyond STEAM, because then it's confidence and speaking.
Far beyond that. That's right.
Which is a whole
They're learning leadership. This is the personal development side of it. So this is all goes into, ties off of our mission. This now brings all that to life in this project experiential based learning that are also solving something significant and relevant in the community in which they reside, or it could be beyond that. So that's a great example to me, what I got to first see and go, wow, that's really, really cool. Now really wait till we actually bring further disciplines around continuous improvement in that. And so for those that would be watching, all of our students will come out as qualified as a 6 Sigma green belt. And what that means is they will master a method of learning largely through an acronym called DMAIC, DMAIC, which they learn how to approach. So now take a project, which is actually one of the things to be certified, to successfully complete that course, you actually have to do a project. It fully ties into it, but it goes across everything. So it's giving them that continuous improvement mindset, that system thinking of how do I define an opportunity or a problem? How do I accurately define that? How do I measure that? Bringing all the elements of STEAM together. How do I measure that? How do I analyze that? So one measuring is are we measuring it today? Do we have any data? Oh, no, we don't. Okay, so now we have to begin to measure it. So now we have to understand, well, what are we measuring? Then I have to learn how to analyze that. What is it telling me, right? So all the analytical skill set that has to be in there. Then I go into root cause analysis. Well, why is it that way? We go through the root cause analysis tools. We'll teach them that 5 whys, fishbone diagram, all these things that we learn in business. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in that actually help save millions of dollars to the bottom line. They're learning that now. And then they go through, after they've identified the root cause, then they go into the improved stage. Okay, well, what are some possible solutions? Constraint-free thinking now, right? We're not constrained going, well, we've always done it that way. I cannot stand that statement.
Me neither.
Right? So now
any organization.
Yeah. So we blow that up, help them to create, well, what are the potential solutions? Then you put that solution in place. Now you go back and measure and analyze to make sure you got the desired results that you're looking for. Once you have the desired results, so you live inside of that until you get to the desired results. Once you have that, then you help put it into the control phase. So now it becomes the new method of operation and how we operate. They're going to learn that stuff before they graduate.
Sounds like adult training.
They're
right?
adulting.
It sounds like actual problem solving you would legitimately use later in life or in the workforce.
Across everything.
Right.
Now couple that with our grit process, which goes well with that as well. Now you are forging a principal leader. And so part of that principal leader too is that we're teaching them about ethical leadership, which I just described was some of the, experience I had against that. We're going to help them become a true principled leader who have the armor, the training to go in, whether they go to college or they go straight into the workforce. I asked a guy who's actually bringing his son to a wrestling practice. He's a founder of a manufacturing company in the area, is a VP manufacturing. So I know he understands this lean thinking, this continuous improvement. And I said to him, Trevor, I said, what if our graduates come out and they are Six Sigma green belt trained? He was like, that'd be amazing, like absolutely amazing, because he understands what that means.
Right.
And so they come out. Now the competitive advantage is when our students come out, when Hudson comes out, when Caden comes out, and they're graduating and they have this portfolio of all this stuff, they are going to look very attractive to any organization, or they now have the skill set to just start their own, because we have a great entrepreneurial mindset as well. So they're going to be well equipped. I think they're going to have a much stronger tool set physically, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
It already sounds like it, because when I sit in oral boards and people walk in with like a college degree, I don't know what that means anymore. It doesn't mean they know how to show up to work on time. It doesn't even mean it oftentimes means the opposite. They don't know how to be dressed when they get there. They don't know how to look you in the eyes and shake your hands. There's no foundation of their prior work experience. College no longer prepares our kids for the real world. Unless it's that specialization. So that sounds cool to me. I mean, making good, productive young humans in our society. That's cool.
That is the ultimate, ultimate goal. Right? So
that won't waver.
Yeah.
Right. They won't waver in the face of adversity. They won't waver.
And that's what we talk about on a lot of the other is that's what sports supplements with school, because they don't get it in school.
Yeah.
Imagine if it was like that on both.
Right.
Because right now there's so much focus in public schools about the ones that are behind, the ones that are at the front that don't have to, there's no effort being applied or put in.
Right.
Don't focus on that at all. So very cool program.
Man. Well,
a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're on the right path, and I'm thankful my kids are there. That's like, the leadership there is amazing. Teachers are amazing.
Yeah, they are.
Facilities amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's right. The teachers there get it. Like they get it. And it is I've tell it to the parents as well. Like, I'm a father. I got 4 kids in here. Like, it's wildly important who they're, I'm the one responsible, my wife and I, to their education.
Right.
But because we are responsible, I care about who is influencing them. Right. And I love the teachers and staff that we have there. I completely trust them. They think the same way. They want to be in the same direction. And that's pretty special.
And they're passionate, which is huge.
And dads like you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Yeah.
I'm serious. Like,
I appreciate that, because
that's why you're in the rite of passage with us. Us create that.
Yeah. That's the coolest thing ever. Well,
And
we're
too.
pushing it now.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna
He's
bring
coming.
him,
You
yeah,
gotta come.
I'm gonna come
Get him
check
there.
it out for sure. Well, I've talked to him about coming and teaching at the school because he said they do outside the box.
Yes.
I've taught at a couple other private schools.
Awesome.
I've been a drug cop now for 10 years. So we talk about like
Oh man.
drug trends and the challenges they face
we need
and
to
how
get
their
them out there.
society is
Yeah.
different and all that. And I know it can be a tough topic because it's challenging and the choices that they have are so vastly different than when we were kids. So had some success with that though. It's pretty cool. It's eye-opening for them.
Yeah, he's got to come out.
Yeah.
We need it.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
We'll put the contact info for the school in the description so you guys can find the website, check it out. And you guys have a website for 365 Grit?
Yeah, so we do. It's actually getting overhauled right now.
Okay.
We're moving all of our stuff into a different platform, so it'll be pretty incomplete. But for 365 Grit information, you could put it in there as well. Just Phil Kassel, PhilKassel at 365grit.com.
Okay, I'll put that in the description as well so they can find that.
sure.
Hit you up.
Awesome.
Questions.
Should be some cool stuff coming up.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. It was really informative, and I hope
thank
people
you.
got some value out of that.
I know I'm going to leave this podcast and get some jacked
fired up.
Yeah, and go work out or something. I got to go do something. I'm pumped up. That's good.
All
for
right.
having
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Let's do it again
Loved it.
sometime. All right.
Love it.
Bye, guys.
That's cool, man.